no helicopters have been procured for me to go to golf course. Thank you.
I've never said he wasn't a great politician. I'm just saying he's a officer.
He's supposed to be an interview.
How'd you play out there today?
Well, I found the conditions challenging, mostly because there's no grass on the golf course, but there never has been.
I'm thinking about this back there, and I have high hopes for this back there.
Track. When you got 3 crevices on the green, your course is trash.
What's going on, folks? Welcome back. Beltway Golfer, episode 28. Alex Dixon here. For this podcast, we headed to Sperryville, Virginia, as it's all about Schoolhouse Nine, the creation of proprietor Cliff Miller and golf course architect Mike McCartin. If you're not familiar, it's a minimalist 9-hole public golf course that, if you're heading from the DC Beltway region, is right on the left side of the main road heading into Sperryville on your way to the entrance to Shenandoah National Park. And it is an incredibly easy walk. It's 9 par 3s, extremely family friendly. It's attached to an old schoolhouse, hence the name, that has been converted into an old kind of old-fashioned arcade of sorts, where Cliff and I actually sat down and recorded the podcast, and a really cool pub, the Headmaster's Pub, which is also where you pay your greens fees to play the golf course. So if you haven't been, certainly after listening to this, but couldn't encourage anyone to go check it out if you haven't already. For the podcast, it was twofold. We first sat down with Cliff Miller. However, I met up with him on the way down to a Pinehurst trip. This was on the way down. If you listened to last week's episode in Richmond at Belmont Golf Course, that was on the way back from Pinehurst. This was on the way down. So the portion with Cliff is about 20 minutes long, and then met up with Mike McCartin, who Cliff hired to build the course and design the course, to get his thoughts on Schoolhouse 9, on the project, on the course, his memories of first meeting Cliff, and going through the design process to bring Schoolhouse 9 to life. I'm a huge fan of the course. Again, it's an incredible place to, if you've got a family, if you've got kids, to head down for a day trip or an overnight trip to Sperryville. Small little town, but we mentioned in the conversation some great places to eat and drink, and unbelievably walkable. And the golf course absolutely encourages kids. I've been out there more than once where I've seen strollers being pushed by golfers with their little ones, being pushed alongside. Any case, that's the podcast. It's Cliff Miller, who is the owner of the property and who first had the vision for Schoolhouse 9, and Mike McCartin, who was hired by Cliff to build the golf course. Mike McCartin, if you're not aware, was the very first guest on this podcast, episode 1, as one of the founders of National Links Trust. Schoolhouse 9 was his first solo project, so it was a lot of fun to sit down with him, and I actually recorded the conversation with him at East Potomac Park, right next to the mini golf course. So that was fun. But here it is, episode 28, Schoolhouse 9, Cliff Miller and Mike McCartin. Enjoy. Cliff, how are you?
I'm doing well. Welcome to Sperryville.
I appreciate it. I'm psyched to be out here. I've been down several times, played Schoolhouse 9 a handful of times myself, but this is the first time you and I are meeting. So I appreciate you being up for coming on Beltway Golfer.
Excited to have you down here.
So let me let's kind of start from the beginning. Well, first of all, we're sitting here in the what do you call this room?
The arcade, but it's really my man cave. Quite honestly,
it's a big man cave. I wish that's all. So interesting. I want to hear about that kind of the origin of Schoolhouse 9. But the first time I came down here, I'm not sure what year it was, but this was in an antique store.
Yes.
So let's start from the beginning. What year did Schoolhouse 9 open?
2013, I think it was.
2013.
No, 2000. Let's see. I'm trying to remember the sign, because Michael McCartin designed the billboard, and it was a father and son walking down the fairway, and it said coming. No, it was 2015. It said coming 2015 Schoolhouse 9.
He designed the billboard like a sign, just saying like, there's a golf course coming soon?
Yeah, we used to have a billboard out front, and it had Had a big. It was a picture with the mountains in the background, and it had a father and son walking down the fairway.
That's hilarious. So well, let me back up even further. So how long have you owned, so you own this property. How long have you owned the property for?
So my great-great-great-grandfather bought what is now called Mount Vernon Farm in 1827.
Oh, wow.
So it's been in my family. I'm the 7th generation, and our children are the 8th.
So did that farm, how big was the farm? Was it more than what you see here?
This is contiguous to the rest of the farm, but it goes across the street and up the side of the mountain.
Oh, wow.
And it's on both sides of the street.
And so is that still part of your family's property as well?
It's amazing, but it's managed to stay in the family this long, pretty much in its entirety.
Oh, wow, that's awesome. So the schoolhouse, so this is originally a schoolhouse.
This was a schoolhouse.
What's the history there?
It was built in the early 1900s. It was my grandfather went to school here. I think there were 4 or 5 people per class. And it was decommissioned as a school, I think in the 60s.
Okay.
And my father bought the building, and it became the Sperryville Emporium, which was just a giant kind of bazaar type market. You could buy everything from moccasins to fireworks to stick candy and things like that. And it was a very popular kind of retail destination.
Okay.
They closed up that business some 20 years ago.
Okay.
And it's had a lot of different tenants since then. And it was really kind of sitting empty when I got to Rappahannock County about 10 years ago. And so decided to reopen a restaurant here and kind of try to make it a community hub again.
And so when you kind of, took over, was the golf course always part of your vision?
It wasn't. The restaurant was the first thing to go in here, and I just thought it would be nice to have a place to play golf that was close by and part of the restaurant. It really all kind of fits together pretty well.
Yeah. So you're a golfer.
I love golf. Yeah.
As I was walking in, for folks that have been here, the pub where you pay your greens fees, the Headmaster's Pub, and there's tons of golf memorabilia, including flags. And you'd said you've played a lot of the courses of the flags, and they're flags from all over the world.
Yeah,
that's cool. So when you first got the vision, okay, I'm going to turn this into a golf course. What then? How did you start that process of trying to figure out who to build it, who to talk to, how to get it going?
I guess the very first thing I did was sit down with Google Maps at the bar right in here, and you can draw on Google Maps, and I made a little 9-hole course. And this field is roughly 25 acres, and so I kind of knew where it would have to go, and there are not been so many routing choices. So I drew it, and I still occasionally go back and look at the drawing I made on Google Maps, and it's fun.
Does your original drawing look at all like what it is now?
They're not too far apart, to be honest. I had played a number of Tom Doak courses.
Okay.
And so I called his office and I said, I've got this, basically a cow pasture at this point in time, and I'd like to turn it into a fun little 9-hole golf course. Your design fee is way beyond our scope, but I really admire your design aesthetic.
Sure.
And so I said, if there's anything you can do in the way of advice, I would appreciate it. And several weeks later, I got a call from someone in his office, and they said, one of our shapers has just finished up at Stream Song. He lives in D.C. Here's his number. And Mike was down here the next day.
So that's Mike McCartin. So he came down the next day. And so what was that, if you remember, what was that first conversation with him like?
It was great. We walked the property, and I think he immediately had a vision for it. And I was interested in doing it, and we just immediately got along, and we've become good friends since. But we kind of shared the vision.
So was it during that conversation that, one of the kind of standout things about Schoolhouse Nine is that, most of the, correct me if I'm wrong here, but there's only irrigation on the greens. Most of the effort is put in the greens. Let's focus less on everything else. It's all about the greens.
That was kind of part of our original design intent, but it also made it a lot easier, and it was by no means easy to get it through the local kind of political scene here, which is very anti-development, which is okay. But there were water concerns and other concerns, and we irrigate 1.4 acres total.
Which is nothing
Which
for,
is-
I mean, a normal golf course,
there-
it's
there are a
triple
lot of-
digits, right?
Yeah, large yards that use more water than we do.
Right.
So that's something we're proud of.
What was that like? So, getting this approved through, is it the town of Sperryville or Rappahannock County? or-
Rappahannock County had to approve it,
And
and that was very difficult. We had to have a lot of zoning laws changed because there was nothing on the books for a small 9-hole course. It was basically, if you want to build an 18-hole country club, this is what you got to do, and they had made it nearly impossible. And so I had to present.
Why
to
would that
them.
be different?
It was set up, I think, by people who had never anticipated that there would be a golf course in this county.
Got it. So the permitting process was brand new to them.
That took, over a year to get the permits to even start building it.
Got it. Few headaches, I imagine.
It was a long process, but in the end, I think everyone got what they wanted. And the people who were really afraid of it, which is understandable, I think got to a place where they were more comfortable.
Awesome. So it was that simple of a process. You got on the phone with Tom Doak. He recommended Mike McCartin, and Mike McCartin comes down here and says, "You're the man for the job," and he's hired.
Was pretty much how it went.
If only, I'm sure other golf course owners would say, if only were that easy. And so then from that day when he came down here to getting started, is that when the permitting process kind of started? So it was like a year after that when, moving dirt or
it was just
a little
about
amount
a
of
year
moving dirt happened?
After we met that we were able to actually start moving dirt.
And then because it was really only building greens and some bunker side green or green side bunkers, was the construction and building of the golf course, I would imagine that took a lot less time than your normal golf course.
Good question for Mike. I don't have a benchmark. I would imagine so as well, but having not built a full 18-hole course.
Well, do you remember how long that took?
I think we were 6 to 8 months of work.
Yeah, it doesn't sound too bad. So it's been open for 6, 7, 8 years, something like that. You started to get some national attention. We were just chatting about, you're on the hidden gem map of the Sugarloaf Social Club, which is a popular local outfit that finds little hidden gems of great golf courses. And I came down to the Golfers Journal event last year, which was really cool, and that's a really popular national publication. What about locally? Like the town of Sperryville and those 6,800 residents of Rappahannock County, how have they taken to it?
We're getting there. We see a lot more muck boots out there than we did 3 or 4 years ago.
Guys playing in muck boots?
The farmers who figured out that it's kind of a fun way to come and spend the evening, and especially ones with children.
Yeah,
we're seeing a lot more of that. So it is certainly becoming more, of a local scene.
Sure.
Than when it was when we first opened.
When you first opened, were most of the people that were playing for the first few years folks from D.C. that would just come down, or maybe passing through to go to the national park?
We get people from Culpeper, Warrenton, even as far as Charlottesville, that will come and play a couple rounds.
Yeah. But it's really, it's about as kid-friendly a course as I think you'll ever find.
Yeah, and that was part of the design intent, was to make it approachable for kids.
Yeah.
And beginners.
Sure. I think I've told this on one of my social media channels at one point, but one of the last times I came down here, I was my wife and child. We spent the weekend somewhere in Shenandoah, and on the way back, my kid, I think was 2 or 3 at the time, and he was sleeping in the car. And I just said, all right, "Can you watch him for? I'm gonna play this course." And 45 minutes later, it's like a pit stop. But that's fun. So has it gotten, over the years, as it's gained more attention and as the county residents are kind of taking to it, has it gotten busier?
Definitely.
Yeah.
And this past year has been by far the busiest,
really?
Which I think a lot are having the same.
And it's how? What is the greens fee these days to play?
It's an all-day rate, $15 during the week and $25 on the weekends.
I don't think you're going to beat that anywhere. I might talk to, we chatted earlier, to Mike as well, a little bit more about the actual building of the course and some of his thoughts around it. How often do you get to play?
A couple times a week.
A couple times a week.
Yeah.
What's your best score out here?
3 under.
3 under?
Yes.
Wow.
You would think it would be better than that, but there's still holes that trip me up.
Still, what is that? That's a 24. That's
Not too bad.
not too bad. So let's go back for a second, get away from the golf course, talk about this room. So, like I said, it was an antique shop for a while. Well, that was your business?
Yeah, we've tried a number of different things. And as the restaurant's grown this area, we've kind of expanded into this area for food service as well.
Right. And so where'd you get all these games?
All over the place. My wife Jordan over here and I have traveled all over to arcade auctions and people's basements. I kind of try to find things that had some kind of personality and fun. A lot of them are vintage.
Yeah. I think it's terrific. And it really adds to the, family kind of atmosphere. And hey, let's go for a day trip and bring your kids, and you can play 9 and maybe bribe them with some video games afterwards. What about the pub? So the pub opened about the same time, or?
The pub opened 2012. Is that right, hon? 2012? 2000. Yeah. So the pub was 2013. The golf course was 2015.
Got it. So do a lot of I imagine that a lot of folks come just to eat or have a couple beers that aren't necessarily have anything to do with golf, right?
Yeah. I would say that the vast majority.
Right. What's going on in the rest of the building?
So our tenants downstairs are a local community college that does primarily nursing programs.
Oh, wow.
And then upstairs I have just commercial tenants.
Got it. Very cool. So as we were trying to organize this, you mentioned you're just recovering from a trip out to Bandon Dunes.
Yes.
How was that?
That was a marvelous time.
Yeah.
The first time I've been on a plane in over a year.
How about that?
Yeah.
Very cool. This is I don't think maybe not a lot of folks realize that the owner of Schoolhouse Nine is such an avid golfer, and it makes all the sense in the world. Any plans for the future, or the state it's in was.
I think the course will remain what it is. We're putting in a big practice area.
Really?
So if you drive towards Culpeper on the left-hand side, you'll see. Right now there's just buckets out there, but there's a large practice area where people will be able to go and hit balls.
Oh, cool. Like how much space are we talking?
It's the size of a standard range. It's
Got it.
10, 12 acres.
Oh, excellent. So I guess you're saying that's further down the road?
It is basically right behind us. So on the other side there's a row of houses here. It's on the other side of those. So you could walk over there, but most people probably will drive.
Yeah, excellent. So with your family, being, property owners and being a part of Sperryville for so long, for folks that don't know anything about Sperryville, this is a really cool town. It's right next to the entrance, one of the 4 entrances to Shenandoah National Park. Tell us a little bit about Sperryville.
Well, Sperryville has seen a real renaissance. So there's a lot of young people building businesses here that are make it a really attractive destination. And I'm not sure you could have said that 10 years ago.
Right.
There's a couple of really nice breweries.
A couple?
Yeah.
I know that is Penn Druid, is that?
So Penn Druid has one that's just past the golf practice area.
Right.
And the Hopkins Ordinary is right in town.
Okay, I don't
and
think I've been
they're
down.
actually putting in a third one on Main Street, I think, coming this summer.
Wow.
There's really nice fine dining. Three Blacksmiths has gotten national acclaim.
I haven't eaten there, but I've heard it's outstanding.
Yeah, the food is terrific.
Yeah.
So Sperryville is.
And you also have a distillery.
We have a distillery, Copper Fox, right across the street.
So if you're looking for post-round beverages, there's no shortage in Sperryville.
Yeah, a lot of good options.
That's awesome. Lastly, so you started to put on some tournaments. Either last weekend you had what was it called? 3 pigs and a stick? Three sticks and a pig.
Yeah.
Which is a three club tournament.
Uh-huh.
And I imagine some barbecue afterwards?
Yes.
Very cool. How did that go?
It went great.
Yeah.
Jordan, my wife, ran it because I was on the West Coast.
You're enjoying Bandon.
I think people had a great time.
Any other tournaments during the year?
Yeah, we have, I think, 4 scheduled that we're putting on, and then we'll have some fundraisers. It's been pretty popular for fundraisers. And I think because it's just, they can play the golf in an hour, and it's not such a huge commitment time-wise for the people who want to do it.
Very cool. One of the things I always ask kind of everybody on this show, do you play a lot of other golf in the area?
Yes.
Any other golf courses that you particularly enjoy, or you play a lot? Or
The one I play is Larae Caverns.
Oh yeah,
And
I don't think I've ever played that.
It's a really neat course.
Really?
It's a, I think, typical 60s, 70s style walking course where it's hilly, but it's a great walk because it's green to tee, is very little distance.
How far is that from here?
It's a 25-minute drive from here.
I might have to stop by on the way out of
It's
here.
worth your stop.
Larae Cat. Okay.
Terrific greens.
I feel like I've seen the sign a million times, but didn't think too much of it.
It's past the caverns, which
Okay.
is a big tourist attraction, and that's a wonderful course.
Very cool. There it is, Larae Caverns. And then, as we were setting up here, you shared a kind of a fun story. As previously mentioned, the pin flags that are hanging above the bar. One of them that jumped out at me, because there's all these world-class, like top 100 courses, is Patuxent Greens, which is now closed in Laurel, Maryland. And tell us the story of why the Patuxent Greens flag is hanging up there.
We put it up there because we were up there just at their auction. They had auctioned off all their equipment.
It closed like 2 years ago.
It was a couple of years ago, and we looked on top of the clubhouse, and it was covered in solar panels. And the electric bill in this building is huge, and we always thought it would be nice to have solar panels. And so we made them an offer for the solar panels, and we ended up taking all the solar panels off the roof that they were going to demo the clubhouse, and brought them over here and put them on this roof, and it's cut our electric bill by more than half, which has been really nice.
Thank you, Patuxent Greens. Are they in the back half? I didn't even notice them.
Yeah, you don't see them. This building has a slightly arched roof, and the south-facing exposure is that half.
That's pretty cool. Was that when they closed? I've been to one or two kind of golf course closing auctions. Was that did a lot of people show up to that? Was that an online thing, or was it in person?
Usually 40 or 50 people will show up. I think most of them are online with the advent of COVID.
Yeah,
But
right.
I've been to over a dozen of those auctions to pick up equipment.
Interesting. Very cool. Well, listen, I really appreciate you being open and coming on the podcast.
Yeah.
It's a pleasure to meet you.
Pleasure to meet
And,
you. Thank you for being here.
Absolutely. I'm a big fan of Schoolhouse Nine. And I searched. Is this your first podcast?
I think so.
How about that?
As far as I know.
Right. So yeah, I can't recommend it enough, and best of luck going forward, and congratulations, an awesome spot.
Thank you so much, and thank you for being here.
Mike, how's it going?
Good.
We're hanging out at the East Potomac Park mini golf course on a beautiful Wednesday morning, but we are not here to talk about East Potomac Park. We are here to talk about the course that you're representing on your hat, Schoolhouse 9 in Sperryville, Virginia, as a continuation of this episode where the first half I spoke with Cliff Miller.
Great.
So let's start at the beginning. So Cliff talked about he got referred to you by Tom Doak. Do you remember that first kind of conversation with Cliff?
I do. Cliff called. We set up a time to meet in Sperryville, and my wife and I took that as an opportunity to go and spend a weekend in the area. And Cliff, as the owner of the Inn at Mount Vernon Farm, nicely offered a night at his establishment as part of the, weekend when we were coming down there. And so we set up some dinners in the area and hiked Old Rag. And by the time I actually met Cliff, it was like after hiking Old Rag. And
this is the B&B on his farm.
Yeah, which is great. It's a beautiful.
We talked about Cliff and I talked a little bit about the farm, but we didn't really talk about the B&B.
Oh, there's a whole story there. I mean, the bed and breakfast itself is their family house.
Yep.
And it dates back to the early 1800s, I think, and is just a beautiful building, which has been converted into a B&B with something like 7 or 8 rooms and kind of a a room that's separate from the main building, which is really nice.
I came home after talking with him and looked up the website and immediately started looking at vacancy.
It fits the area,
Or what little
but
of it
it's
there
also
was.
like very, very nice. So it's a great getaway for couples weekend.
Can you see Schoolhouse 9 from the B&B?
You can't see from the building, but from their house you can see Old Rag. It's a beautiful view. And then there's a hiking trail that goes around the property that they built. Oh, nice. And from the hiking trail there are several overlooks which you can see the golf course, which is nice.
So that first weekend, so you stay in the B&B. Had you even met him yet?
I hadn't met him yet. We got there the day before. We got up really early in the morning the day that we were going to meet Cliff. We did Old Rag, which is like a 9-hour hike.
Even though it is a walk in the park, it's no walk in the park.
Yeah, I'm not a expert on hikes, but to me, it was one of those memorable hikes that if you live in this area, everybody should do, because there's a rock scramble, the top of the mountain, spectacular views. It's really, really worthwhile. But when we got back, my legs were like jello, and we were tired, and going to meet Cliff for dinner at the headmaster's pub there, and so that was my introduction. I was zonked, tired, just. But instantly hit it off with Cliff, because he's just a golf nut.
By the way, we know Mike has kids because he just used the word zonked. And I only started using that. I only started using that word when I had a kid.
Yeah, it's seeped into the lexicon. So we got to talking about what he has and what he was thinking in terms of building a golf course, and talking about his life and how it intersected with golf, and what he finds important about golf and golf courses, and what he looks for when he's playing. And it was just really clear right off the bat that he was going to be an incredible owner of a golf course.
At the time, were you, because Schoolhouse was your first golf course design,
yes.
Were you actively looking for your first project?
I was actively looking for projects in the DC area. So I wasn't actively looking for owners of new golf courses necessarily. So at the time,
like renovation work, or
I was looking to start building up some experience here in the area, because I'd just come off of the Stream Song project with Tom Doak, and the next project was going to be in China for a year, and I was just about to get married, and I didn't want to be beholden to taking the next job all the time. And so I was looking to establish some sort of foothold in the area, both with non-golf work so that I didn't have to take the next golf job, but then also to build in local projects so I didn't have to be traveling as much.
Sure.
So I know Tom knew that, but I think more than anything just knew that I was local, and this was the type of job that I think he's looking to help out the guys who've worked for him, and fit well for that.
So Cliff said, and you just reiterated, that you guys hit it off pretty immediately. Cliff mentioned that he had already kind of drawn out loosely a routing for the property. When you first saw the property, I'd imagine with any golf course designer, you immediately start, that's like the first thing you start doing is like, hey, where do the holes go? I can go this way, that way. How did that end up aligning or not aligning?
So honestly, I don't remember what Cliff's original.
He says it doesn't look that much different than what it does now.
It probably doesn't, because the site itself can't really support a whole bunch of different, general ideas for routing. My first impression when seeing the site was that I wasn't sure how much topography there was, how much interest there was in the land, because the grass, it was like a meadow that was grazed by livestock, and when I first saw it, the grass was maybe chest high. So looking out over that property, it all looked about the same, and it looked fairly flat going out. And so I was a little bit worried not worried, but just figuring that you'd have to kind of create everything from scratch. There wasn't a lot to work with. But then getting out there and walking the site with Cliff, started to realize that there's a lot more to it than you could see, and that there's kind of some things that were pretty clear off the bat that you would want to incorporate into the design of the course and the routing of where the holes went.
Such as like the fall off towards the back of the property.
Yeah, so there's the fall off in the back, which is clearly like the most dramatic part of it. So, and now there's 3 holes kind of playing around that little loop, and so that's because it's a place where you want to, actually experience those contours as much as possible, like maximize that area.
Yeah.
So I mean, they're short holes. They're each like 115 max down to 85, I think, but I think they're each different, and they kind of provide a different perspective on the property and different types of shots. So it's definitely a little area that I want to make sure the golf course spent a lot of time in.
Yeah. I mean, the whole property is what, like 20 or 30 acres?
I think it's 25.
25. So there's not that many options, I would imagine, of different. I mean, you could have gone the opposite way.
Could have gone the other way.
Could have maybe done some zigzagging thing. I don't know.
The routing kind of makes a figure 8, so it crosses over itself. But honestly, the biggest things that determined for me where the holes went, I wanted to make sure there was. So the second hole kind of plays into the ridge where the electrical wiring crosses, but that's kind of set up.
Which I don't know if I've ever even really noticed.
I know it's actually pretty cool. I mean, you think at first, oh man, like what's that? Especially seeing the site, is that going to be kind of something that takes away from the feel of it? But
yeah,
I agree with you.
I've noticed it just to, like, after I'm looking at photographs I've taken more than when I'm actually there.
Yeah.
But also, I mean, like the ridge itself. It's maybe because I'm not of a golf course architecture mind. I'm not, in tune to that. But I read in one of your interviews how you talked about the ridge in the middle of the property. I'm like, there's a ridge in the middle of the property?
Well, yeah. I mean, there's not a lot of topography, but that probably rises about 10 feet right there.
Okay.
So from the first tee height, it dips down a little bit towards the first green and then back up.
And so that's where because the second green is one of the more dramatic ones on the property.
So I mean, that ridge was kind of like, I want to use this for a green site, and I like that spot for the second hole. Basically there's not enough room. You can play 2 holes on that side, going out or coming back, and 1 hole on the other side. And if you think about just how that would work, the 1 hole coming back, which is now the 9th, or going out, would have been a long hole to start or a long hole to finish.
Right.
And the backdrop for the hole coming back is the schoolhouse, and makes for a really nice kind of finishing view as you're playing. So that was kind of the key of, do you want that hole
and you're staring at Shenandoah National Park right behind it. So it's hard to keep your camera in the pocket when you're walking back on the 9th.
And it's also got some topography. You're playing downhill. You've got a tilt in the land. If you're playing the other way coming in, it's flat. You're looking at the parking lot in the backdrop, and there's just not as much, recommending that as being the finishing spot for the hole.
Was the idea, because I mean, one of the most unique things about the property is that, the focus is really all on the green complexes. Those are the only areas that are irrigated.
Yeah.
Was that the plan from the jump?
Oh yeah. Yeah, I mean, Cliff, what's really cool is Cliff kind of recognizes that the only thing you really need for a golf course to succeed are just well-maintained greens.
Right.
And, kind of keeping the course wide enough for everybody to get around. So, I mean, if you're going to just focus on maintaining the greens well, I mean, the thing that goes hand in hand with that is having greens that are really interesting, and especially on a par 3 course, that might make you feel like you're playing something different or trying to solve a different problem from day to day. Mm-hmm. So all the greens there, for the most part, are greens designed that if you put the hole in one side of the green one day versus the other side the next day, you're going to have to try and hit a different shot or feel like you're doing something different, makes you think about it differently, which hopefully, brings an element of variety to a course where otherwise you're starting and finishing in the same place on every hole.
Sure.
So
So did he kind of propose that to you, or was that kind of a mutual? Because it almost seems, looking back at your thesis on East Potomac Park and just municipal golf design, I actually looked at it. I took out an excerpt where you talk about the British approach to golf course maintenance, and the reason I'm bringing it up is it almost seems like, I don't know if destiny's the right word, but if this was already his idea and he brings in and gets a recommendation for a guy that wrote this thesis, but you say, by stressing the quality of the greens, maintenance efforts are focused on the areas most essential to a golfer's enjoyment of the course, by treating the rest of the course as an ecological system as opposed to an artificially green and uniform.
Yeah. And
there's more to it, but that was in 2007 or 2008 when he wrote that, and that's exactly kind of what his plan was.
Yeah, Cliff and I could not be more on the same page for what we like or care about in golf courses. I think it's mostly fun, but then for Cliff, he's operating a business too. Sperryville is not, it's not the middle of Washington, D.C., like where we are, where there's just a ton of people coming and going. And so for him, it's sustainability in like the broadest sense. I know he does care about the environment and how the golf course fits into the environment and doing the right thing there, but he also cares about the economic sustainability of his business. And so I think it's kind of just extreme practicality, right? You can maintain the golf course for next to nothing, or, relatively speaking, and build it in the same way by minimizing what you're trying to maintain. And it really doesn't cost much more at all for me to come in. It literally costs nothing more for me to come in and build really, hopefully interesting greens and features for the course that help take the focus away from maintenance and onto like what makes the course unique. And has less maintenance costs for the owner, allowing him to charge as little as he does to play the course. Exactly. Which is a win-win for everybody. You don't need to keep the course full all the time in order to balance the budget for the course. Right, exactly. You had mentioned before I went down to interview Cliff, and I kind of asked you like what are a couple things I should ask him, and you mentioned the permitting process, and I brought it up to him, and I almost got the sense that he didn't want to elaborate too much in case folks were listening, and he kind of gave there were some hurdles, but it all worked out. Yeah. But I read out, and a quick shout out to Old Line, Matt Roberts, Old Line Golf. I was reading his kind of conversation with you, and you elaborate a little bit more on it about how there was a specific meeting with the Rappahannock County where it was they almost voted it down hastily, and the course never would have happened. Yeah. So setting the scene, this was my first experience with local politics, but there were two items on the local zoning commission's agenda. One was adding a single bedroom to a bed and breakfast, and the other was not whether the golf course could be built. It was whether the county would allow for a 9-hole golf course versus an 18-hole golf course, which was the only thing that the county bylaws allowed. Was an 18-hole 18-hole golf course on a certain amount of acreage. And so all we were asking for was... As if like a 9-hole course was somehow more offensive than an 18. Would you make an exception to that rule to allow a 9-hole course on 25 acres instead of an 18-hole course on 300 acres? Or whatever it was. But we were second on the agenda, and I've never seen anything so contentious in my life as this addition of one bedroom to a bed and breakfast. And the whole issue that was causing problems was whether it would increase traffic on the single lane road into the house to an intolerable level for the other 3 houses that were on the road. And it's a legitimate point, and it went back and forth, and it was... You're talking about the main road, like just to the left of the golf course? No. This was to somebody else's. Oh, this is the B&B. This is a B&B. We're still talking about B&B. The question is, if you add a bedroom to this B&B, right, will the other neighbors be affected negatively by the increased traffic? Right. Which seems ridiculous when you think about it, because there's probably just 2 or 3 trips made a day by whoever's staying there in and out. How could that be a problem? But it was an extremely passionate debate, and it dragged on for hours. and this meeting already started, I think, at 7:30 or 8. So by the time that wrapped up, it was 10 p.m. and the people on the zoning commission were completely done, and they wanted to get through the agenda, so they literally just brought it up, talked amongst themselves, in an internal debate, saying, we don't really want golf here anyway, and they were ready to vote against it in that moment. And Cliff and I stood up and we just said, hey, I think we're all tired here. Can we table this at least,
right,
and have a chance to come back and present what the vision is at the next meeting? And they voted for tabling it on a 5-4 vote.
Really?
And then we ended up getting to come back and present, and
if
then
that
it passed 8-1.
If that had voted no,
I think it would have been a lot harder for the course to happen. We would have had to go back to the same group and figure out how to get back. Anyway, I don't.
So it ended up passing.
It
ended up passing 8-1
on the next one. Yeah.
So you guys gave a pretty good presentation.
Yeah, it was
compelling.
I mean, what we said is what I think we delivered on, which is that the golf course won't feel different than Rappahannock County. I mean, it fits into the meadow that was there.
Sure.
I mean, that's the nature of the course, and you're right. When you're only irrigating the greens and you're just kind of mowing things down, it does feel like it belongs in a field, but at the same time is a golf course.
And also just the fact that it's so family friendly. I mean, almost every time I've been out there where there's other folks playing, several times I've seen strollers.
Yeah.
With little kids just being pushed along while one of their parents is playing golf. But that it's become a very much a family day outing or weekend outing down to Sperryville and Shenandoah National Park, and doing kind of the trip you talked about doing the weekend that you met Cliff.
Yeah.
So I'd imagine it clearly has done well, not just Schoolhouse Nine, but all of the Miller's businesses for the town of Sperryville.
He's a great business person, and just constantly thinking about how he can, take the the elements of whether it's land or property down there to kind of keep building things that work together to as a whole create something pretty special. So
do you know are there many other, I mean, I'm sure there must be some kind of less known kind of backyardish farm courses where they certainly don't have the complex greens that Schoolhouse 9 does, but is not necessarily, fairways aren't kept, tee boxes aren't kept,
right.
They aren't irrigated. There must be some, but are there many others as well known as Schoolhouse?
I don't know a lot of courses that kind of fit this model, because it's really not something you see a ton in the U.S. I don't think. The thing that comes most to mind, but it's not even really a business, is the Some Guy's Backyard. Have you heard of that?
Yeah, and was it Kansas City or Missouri?
Yeah, that's more on the rustic backyard, do it yourself.
I follow those guys. Are they charging people to play?
No,
right.
No.
It's just more of a.
But maybe the feel of what you're doing there, it's is close to what you get at Schoolhouse, where I think what's good about it is because there's no pretension in the presentation of the golf course, and there's a lot of space to play, and that attracts families and everything. There's just it creates just keeps building on itself towards creating kind of like a culture of real extreme inclusiveness and fun. And that's,
but the difference, I mean, I think there's a lot of, I mean, I've spent a lot of time in rural Maine as well. And
right.
I mean, there's a lot of kind of down homey type golf courses, like the Sugarloaf guys, they're always trying to find these backwoods, old school golf courses with lots of old world charm, where there's no frills. And there's a lot of those out there, but that haven't put the time and effort to making really interesting green complexes that area of the property is on par with some of the nicer courses, but still has that kind of farmish, kind of minimalist, low maintenance feel.
Well, it helps to go into it with that idea from the beginning, because to go to one of those places now, you'd have to spend some money to adjust the greens or
Yeah.
whatever, build something new. I don't necessarily think it's a ton of money, but it is an investment. Whereas if you're starting from scratch, there's no difference between building what we have at Schoolhouse 9 and that, basic farm
Right.
field course.
So talking about the greens, so like once you've got the routing figured out and you've got the plan on what kind of golf course you're going to build, how did you start working on the greens? Like, do you take inspiration from other greens you've seen? Like, how does that process work?
Yeah. Out there, the greens are mostly, and this is kind of sort of the approach I've learned from Tom Doak and working with all of the great guys who work for him, is that having an idea of what you want to build before starting is really important. But then as you get into it, to react to what's happening and as you're building it, and if some of the best ideas you have come once you start the actual process of moving the dirt around and seeing, oh, that's an even better idea than I had before,
Right.
like in the moment.
Sure.
So I would say there's a real mix of greens out there, from ones that I thought of relatively early on in the process to ones that just kind of evolved while building them.
Got
But
it.
certainly
And you did a lot of the kind of the dirt moving of
Yeah.
of yourself, right?
Yeah, so either me or Brett Hochstein, who's a great guy, lives in California and also worked for Doak. He came and helped on shaping. But yeah, either Brett or I built every single thing out there, including not just building the greens, but then obviously all the bunkers and other shaping, draining the bunkers, putting sand in the bunkers, hydroseeding the course, starting to grow in. So I've, buying all the materials. It was a really great experience for me because working on a project for Doak, you're playing a part amongst a major group
Right.
of people doing all of these things. General contractor would do some of that stuff. There are different people on Doak's team who would be taking.
Whereas this sounds, there's just essentially two of you. It sounds like more like a
in this
backyard
case,
project that you're doing with your buddy.
All of those contractor type things I'd never really been exposed to, but I did absolutely all of that, or the planning process,
Yeah.
applying for permits, and
Sure.
every little thing was like one of those, a big project in slightly smaller form.
Yeah, interesting. A couple of the greens are particularly interesting, at least to me. I mean, they all are, but like number 2 is kind of, I think, feels like the most dramatic.
Yeah.
I've been in that back right bunker a couple times,
Yeah.
where the front pin location down low, and there's kind of a dramatic drop right in the middle of that green. But is it 5 and 6?
Yep.
Particularly small ones towards the back of the property.
Yeah.
5, I don't think I've ever gotten on the green. It feels like the size of my living room, which is not big. Was there any kind of inspiration on those? And 6 is a really tricky green.
Yeah.
It looks super simple,
Yeah.
but it's not.
So 5 and 7 are kind of a matched pair because 5 is built up from the floor of that lower section.
Okay.
I wanted to make sure the green was kind of up and out of that area. Can get wet in rainy times. So, and also in order to be able to see it from the tee, it needed to be lifted a bit out of the grade of the lower section. So my idea from the beginning was to take a chunk of material from the side of the 7th green and push it down the hill and create that platform of the 5th.
Okay.
And so, but while keeping the idea that the hole's kind of playing down the hill, so you got to land it short and kind of bounce it onto the green. So I needed the material for 5, and the way it kind of works with 6 or 7 is by taking that material out, I started to create that kind of back bowl. So you play 7's green is interesting because there are kind of 2 places for the hole to go. One would be right up on the edge of the drop off in front.
Yep.
and then the other would be over top of that. There's like a lower bowly section.
Right.
But that bowly section is the area where I took all the dirt to make the 5th green.
That's kind of right in the middle, towards the right a little bit.
Yeah, and then
Yeah.
all the way kind of around
Okay.
and out.
Interesting.
So so I knew what I wanted to do on 5. I needed the dirt for that.
Yeah.
And then I had this idea on 7 that ridge is that's the biggest elevation change out there, and playing up at an angle was the way I wanted to do that hole. And so that there's always going to be like a hole location right along the ridge, so that if you came up short, it would kind of knock you off to the side down the hill. But then I wanted there to be some sort of penalty for going over the green. Mm-hmm. But then, so that's where kind of getting rid of that material was going to work for that. But then I also thought, for going back to that variety idea, that having a back section where it's not always just about playing as close as you can to the ridge. Sometimes you want to go into the back bowl would make for an interesting way to kind of mix up the way the hole played.
I was reaching. I think I was looking at this morning. I had a scorecard in my bag, which I think I left on my kitchen table. But you did a really good job of varying distances as well. So you have to use a lot of the different irons in your bag. Was it always going to be a 9-hole course? Like, did you ever think about 6, 12, 4, 7, whatever?
It was always going to be 9. And I can't tell now, looking back, whether that's because Cliff had the name Schoolhouse 9 in his head from the very beginning.
Gotcha.
And so, but there's always room for 9 par 3. So the site fits really well for 9 holes, for, varying the lengths. But I don't think you could really squeeze more golf onto the property. But those holes fit pretty comfortably without feeling like you're too close together. So maybe on a different piece of property, I would have thought about questioning the 9-hole idea there. But it actually worked well.
It seems maybe I'm skewed because it's only whatever, an hour and a half away, but it seems like it's gotten an awful lot of attention. Am I skewed because we're local, or has it gotten a significant amount of national attention?
I think it just plays into this idea, like it was right at a time where, and this might be reflected in municipal golf, people focusing on municipal golf courses as well, is that what's important in golf has shifted a little bit from the hardest and best conditioned golf courses to what's fun and what builds community, and what do you want to take your friends to and experience together, from beginners to really good players. And so that, in combination with, I think par 3 courses have an appeal because you can play them faster and take less clubs and take more people with you, like stroll your kids along, and all of that kind of combines to especially over the last 5 or 6 years or so, to put a focus on courses that fit those characteristics. So maybe that's part of it. Yeah,
but now clearly, you still have a full-time job, and you're also the founder of National Links Trust. National Links Trust has a lot going on, as everybody knows. But have you been approached about Schoolhouse 9? Not necessarily, whether it be to create something similar, or to consult or get advice or anything like that?
I've had some people reach out about advice on similar projects, and I wouldn't be surprised if there were more projects like that in the future, but I haven't seen much come about that seems like a direct descendant of Cliff's idea for the course. So, but no, not on like a let's go build Schoolhouse 9 somewhere else.
Sure, right. But the idea that, bring it back to National Links Trust a little bit right now, and talking about municipal golf is, a big piece of what we just talked about is creating an interesting golf course, but doing it in a way that saves money from a maintenance standpoint. Yeah. And it can still be lots of fun. Yeah. As National Links Trust has, years of projects ahead of them on these three golf courses, and raising money to afford it all is obviously a huge part of that. I imagine some of those lessons from Schoolhouse are just like that kind of mantra will play a role here as well, isn't it?
Definitely. I mean, I think this is a place where you can show how, that general line of thinking can work on a much, much bigger scale.
Which also you detail at length in your thesis.
Right. But yeah, I mean, I think every project is different. So our goals for exactly how you translate that into reality will be different than at Schoolhouse 9. But the general idea about what kind of golf courses are maintainable at a reasonable cost while still providing like fun and interesting golf, and then what might be the types of things that can engage the widest number of people, especially when you're talking about places that are home to the widest variety of golfers of skill levels and ages and everything. Those are the things we're trying to accomplish here. That's it'll be different than Schoolhouse 9, but hopefully the principles will be exactly the same.
Do you think there's a way I'm thinking now municipal golf a little bit wider, but still in the Beltway? And when you get into kind of suburban golf, and I know this is big around DC, but I'm sure it's the same case in every suburban area in most major metropolitan areas. But I'm thinking like Montgomery County Golf, Prince George's County Golf, Fairfax County.
Yeah.
They run a bunch of, certainly Montgomery County runs a bunch of municipal golf courses. Some are interesting, some feel a little bit stale. Like, right. Is there this line of thinking? How could like a municipality where they're probably, I don't know. I mean, I don't know their books if they're making a ton of money off golf, right. But how can they make their courses more interesting without shutting them down with massive renovations?
Yeah, it's a good question. The golf courses around here, I think, probably aren't reaching their full potential from my like line of thinking. From what are the golf course designs like? I think they tend to have been built in around the same era where there wasn't a huge emphasis on the details of the course. It's more about getting a course in that works and functions well. Ed Alt was excellent at that, and there are a lot of the courses are built by him, and they have really good bones, but not a lot of the detail work that makes that would make me excited about and I think that sort of detail, while not always recognized by your regular player, is still the same thing that gets appreciated kind of subconsciously about, there's something to this, that like a puzzle I'm trying to solve or challenge that I'm working to understand, that really resonates with people, and I think it can be a hook for people coming back and continuing to enjoy the golf course. Like there are places like Northwest in Maryland, which is just a great piece of property. It's really, really good, and you could have a really, really good golf course on it with attention to those kinds of details. But it's already a good course, so I kind of hesitate to say should make a huge investment in ripping up that course and starting over. But if you were to go through and
they're hosting a U.S. Open qualifier.
Yeah, I mean, if you were to go through and renovate a green or two every year and kind of over time add that layer of detail, I think it could go from being a really solid quality course to something really special. So
interesting. What about nowadays? Is Schoolhouse 9 open what year?
2015.
I think Cliff told me in the first part of it. But so it's been open for 6 years or 5 or 6 years.
Yeah.
Do you get down there much to play yourself?
Yeah. So Cliff probably. I mean, I don't think he hates that this is the case, but I'm almost always there with my family, strolling my kids around or pulling my son on a pull cart, which makes it really hard to enjoy the course with Cliff, because I feel like my attention is always diverted. But with the family, I probably get down there 3 to 5 times a year at least.
Nice.
So I'd love to go more. And I'd love to play like 72 holes with Cliff in a day. That would be my ideal, day. But it's also really special to get to experience it with my family. And that's what makes it cool.
really is a great family trip. I mean, I've turned a few of my buddies onto it who have then taken their, wife and kids down, and with the arcade, with the pub, with just like Sperryville is so walkable.
Yep.
You got a couple breweries, you got a distillery, and then of course you have Shenandoah National Park right there. So I mean, it's quite a day trip or an overnight trip.
It's something I didn't really know about living here in the area. I hadn't really been to Sperryville or that area before, and this project has, brought a connection for me to that area that I'm so grateful to have, because it's an excellent place to go.
Totally. I mean, I'd been to Sperryville plenty of times, but each time was for 5 seconds because I drove right past it on my way to National Park until the first time I stopped at the golf course.
Yeah.
And now, I'm as big a fan as Sperryville as like everybody else.
Yeah.
So that's cool. Well, you guys have built something special, so congratulations. It deserves all the attention it's getting, and for folks that are listening that haven't gotten a chance to go out, bring your family. It's a lot of fun. Awesome. Thanks, Mike.
Thanks.
I'm a regular dude living in DC, and I want to know about DC-centric golf stuff. If you can tell me something that I don't already know, then that is great for me. I don't want the regular stuff. I want exciting stuff. I want different stuff. I want stuff I can't hear elsewhere. But I want it to be about DC golf.